What is important though is that you don't overstep, that you don't kill growth more than you have to. And it's a delicate process. It's part science and it's part art. And it takes patience and it takes data to make decisions, for you to make good decisions. Fortunately for us in Jamaica, a big driving force for growth, especially at this time, is tourism. And tourism doesn't have a lot to do with our interest rates. People in the hotel business, tourists coming here, are not as dependent on or subject to or sensitive to our Jamaican dollar interest rate. So tourism has been on the up and up, and we are happy to see that, and we think that it will continue to do so, and that higher interest rates will have nothing to do with its growth and its contribution to growth of GDP in Jamaica, we think will continue in the near future. Secondly, I think you may remember that the Jamalco alumina plant went down. There was a big fire in 2021. 2021. And it was out of action for about a year. Came back in September. So again, you have that kind of turbo that is helping the economy to drive forward. So we feel pretty confident that the economy is going to show good growth in the next couple of quarters. And hopefully in those next couple of quarters, the air will clear a bit and we will see that inflation will take its time and come down. Of course, a big question on everybody's mind, and ours too, is recession. Will there be a recession globally or in the United States, and how will that affect us? No one really knows. What we do know is that the US economy is slowing, notwithstanding a good a good quarter's growth that just came out this week. But still, we think that the economy there is slowing. The hope is that if there is a slowdown or some form of recession, it will be not for very long and not very deep. So maybe sometime next year, this time, we will see that things are not so bad. Inflation is kind of calming down. We hope that this time next year, it will be maybe around 7% or 6%, down from the 9.3 that it is currently. But it's likely to kind of bump along down. So it won't be a smooth path down. It may go up, come down, go up, come down. But generally, we think the trend is down. Okay, with that, let me just pause and take your questions.
I think the governor answered quite a few of our questions that we had. I guess the first one that I have is exact. So you mentioned sometime next year, you expect to see inflation moderating closer to around 7%. Does the BOJ have any estimate of exactly when that is? Is that late summer? Or is it Q3, Q4?
Yes, more like about Q4. So starting about this time next year, we should see inflation around 7, maybe a little lower, hopefully.
Yes. So a key point that you mentioned, and as you said, I know you've been monitoring social media and the general discourse around the BOJ's actions over the past 9 months or so, as it pertains to moving the policy rate from 50 basis points or 0.5% to 6.5%. Matter of fact, I remember when you first moved it late last year, everybody was like, what is the BOJ doing? Because remember, the Fed, Horton, wouldn't have moved rates as yet.
Yes.
So people started to question whether the BOJ was front running incorrectly the Fed, and we would have seen that quarters after that, the Fed started to accelerate their policy rating increase, their Fed rate increases themselves. So would you say that the BOJ has been proven correct in their policy action coming out of October last year until now?
Absolutely. I think every central bank in the world, with a couple exceptions, which we can speak about, have raised interest rates. And the Fed was a little late for whatever reasons. I think they started in about February, March, maybe after Russia invaded Ukraine. But every central bank, the world throughout, has begun to raise interest rates. Turkey, which is the one that I thought of that has not raised rates, but actually lowered rates. Um, I don't know if you know what inflation is there. 83% is the last number that I heard.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask is you spoke about the decisions being based off data and science. It's really bit of an art and a bit of it as a science. But the pass-through effect of interest rates on our policy decisions, when I last read a report by the BOJ, is usually a quarter, which is really a 2-year pass-through. So given the pace in which I've been moving the interest rate, do you think you have given it enough time to pass through the economy? Or do you believe that you're still on the right course currently?
Right. That's an excellent question. And that's part of the art. And one of the things that we do to try to turn it into a science is to do surveys. So we go out and do surveys amongst business people, people who set prices, and we ask them what do they think prices will be like in a year's time or 2 years' time. And what that does is give us an inclination into what their expectations are and what is in their minds when they start to set prices. And to the extent that we see that starting to come down, then we say to ourselves, well, maybe our actions are having effect and we need to watch or to cool our action. So as best we can make it into a science, we do. We watch many other data points. We watch core inflation, which is, there are many core inflations, but the most popular one is inflation that is a CPI without energy and without agriculture, because those tend to move for reasons beyond the control of in the economy. Agriculture because of weather, and energy because of world conditions. So we watch that carefully also, and a number of other issues. Wayne, you want to say some of the other data issues we watch?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. First of all, we look at what's happening globally, because that's very key. So there's a team that studies and monitors almost every day what's happening to commodity prices in globally. Also, what's happening to general economic conditions globally as well, and how that affects us. We also look in terms of the local economy. We look at what's happening in all the sectors of the economy, manufacturing, construction, tourism. And every quarter, we sit with the private sector, we sit with the PSOJ, we sit with the JMA, and we have a long discussion with them for them to tell us what they are seeing. So we not only look at the aggregate data that comes into the bank, but we also go out there and we also engage. I can tell you from time to time, our team will even go out to Coronation Market to talk to the vendors there, just to find out what is happening. So it's quite an involved process. As the governor said, there's a lot of science, but there's a lot of art to it as well.
So one of the things I noticed that you said, Governor, was that the source of the inflation is really supply, which to most is really external, right? And usually when monetary policy decisions are being made, they're being made to affect the economy itself. So given the source of the inflation and the tools available to the current central bank, do you believe that that we should continue along the path in the sense that most of the supply chain issues and that is happening is going to subside eventually or run its natural course? Do you believe there'll be permanent damage to the economy in the terms of growth and even the recession based on the decisions that have been made now?
Good question again. Remember, I said that one of our three policies was to try and manage that foreign exchange rate to be as least volatile as possible, because every good that we import gets impacted price wise by that exchange rate. So key part of our policy moves in this inflation cycle has been the foreign exchange management. But beyond that, people build up their expectations about prices and inflation, and that helps to form what future prices are. So if people feel that they can raise prices anyway, that the economy has enough purchasing power in it, has enough liquidity in it, that they can get a higher price, even when it doesn't warrant. For example, and I'm not picking on landlords, but if you own, say, an apartment and you have moved the rent, there's nothing that has happened in the world or in anything that we have imported that forces you to move rents. But you move it because you think that the economy has the power and the capacity to accept your higher price. So even when you come across a non-traded good, you will find that if you have an economy with too much purchasing power in it, that you will get inflation having a momentum of its own and kind of building on itself. And so some of our high interest rate policy and taking liquidity out of the system is designed to kind of tamper down the economy, cool down purchasing power, hopefully not to a level where we go into recession, just to tamper it down for the time being.
Thanks, Governor. Let's take a step back, because a part of our audience are new investors. They're new to economics. So let's what is the policy rate and how is it set? So talk to me like I'm 10. How so I know you have a meeting. You have a meeting, the governor, the senior deputy governor, and other deputy governors as well. So you would have mentioned, Dr. Robinson, some of the factors that you talk about, say commodity prices. Yeah, you have a specific team that may report to you and say, hey, this is where we think the Fed may be going. This is where we think the financial market locally. This is Costa Rica, this is Trinidad, this is etc. How does that feed into what you call the policy rate? And how does that pass through to the financial markets and to affect the average Jamaican?
Well, let me start and then ask Wayne to finish up. So every commercial bank has to keep their free cash with us. Right? So just like you would keep your cash in a bank, they keep theirs with us. And we offer them an interest rate. And that interest rate is our policy rate. Right? And so not only do they earn from it, but it also is a signal to them as to what the central bank wants from them. So if we raise rates, we want them to raise their rates also. And if we lower our rate, we want them to lend more and to lower their rates. Now, when we come to make a decision, we really have a monetary policy committee. This is a new committee, and it involves not just people like Wayne and Robert Stennett and other persons in the bank, like myself, but persons who are independent of the bank. We have the head of the economics department at UWI, we have Dr. David Marston, who is a ex-IMF Jamaican, and we all make decisions together. Whereas in the past the governor had the last say, nowadays it's a committee that has the last say. And what the committee sees is a whole raft of data that all of Wayne and Robert Stead's department works on for 6 weeks, getting data, international, local surveys, and they present it to the Monetary Policy Committee, who listens. I mean, that is easily a 2-hour session just to listen to all of the presentation. And then we have a break for a day and we come back the following day and we make the decision. And then we announce that decision. So it's quite a routine and quite a policy, quite a system that we work to arrive at a decision. Wait?
Yeah, I'll just add, I mean, you noted earlier that our policy actions affect the economy 4 to 8 quarters ahead. So when we're coming to make a policy decision, that's the horizon we're looking at. We're not just looking at what happened today or what happened yesterday, but we're focused on what will happen a year or 2 years from now. And we look at the raft of data. We do projections as well on all of these variables. Even we do projections on what the government will do, what government policy will do. We have our own independent projections as well. And we bring all of that together. Of course, we have a number of statistical models that helps us to see through the data and understand and put the data in a particular context. And then we have a sense as to how our policy rate actually impacts the economy. The different stages, how it impacts the financial sector first of all, then how it will then impact the rail sector, and then how it will impact the exchange rate, and then how it will impact the prices at the end of the day. So it's quite an intricate and very involved process. And we also have to do assessments as to, well, if we move the policy rate by this amount or in this direction, how will that affect how will that affect all the variables? How will that affect prices at the end of the day? So it's quite an involved process. It's quite an iterative process as well. Now, the governor mentioned the Monetary Policy Committee. That's the melting pot. And the beauty of that committee is that we get external expert input as well, because the external members, they also have their view, they also do their analysis. So that creates for a rich integration of economic analysis.
Just want to say
Yeah.
one thing. When you read my resume, everybody knows I've spent most of my life in the private sector. And then I came over to Bank of Jamaica. And let me tell you, very honestly, what I saw at Bank of Jamaica is a lot of expertise that has been honed over the years. It's not today that Jamaica has been building its economic expertise in the Bank of Jamaica. It goes way back and got a lot of work done through the IMF and other multilateral organizations. We have a cadre of people at Bank of Jamaica that any other central bank would be proud to have. And so when we look at data and we do the analysis, and I announce what that decision is, it's not Richard Miles, it's not even Dr. Wayne Robinson. It is dozens, scores of highly trained, very focused persons who understand economics and who have data and who are helping to do that research and helping us to make the decision.
So one of the things that we like to do as Stocks on the Rocks is really to get into the investing side of stuff. So we need to be able to join the connection between the overall economy and what's happening with the different macroeconomic variables and how that can impact investing. And as you would have said a while ago, you would have been in the private sector, so you would have seen different what we call economic shocks or economic regimes, low interest rates. We're now going into a high interest rate environment. What do you believe from those personal experience being at the head of a larger organization? What do you believe is the current, what I'd say, modus operandi for most financial institutions now in that investing space? Or how would you describe the mood of investors at this time? Are they risk off with higher interest rates, or do you think there are still opportunities and pockets of opportunities?
When we look on data out of the banks, we are seeing that credit to the private sector is slowing. And I think that is quite understandable in the environment that we are in. That is what fighting inflation is all about. So unfortunately, for a period of time, don't know how long, and a lot depends on geopolitical developments in the world, that we don't even know what will happen. But let's hope that in 12 months we'll be seeing a little bit more light at the end of the tunnel. I think the investment environment will look better in 12 months' time than it is looking now. Though, when you look at the GDP data, it's not bad. And I think we're going to end this financial year, March next year, at about 4.3% or 4% plus, which is quite good, coming off of what, 8% the year before. Um, and going forward, I think we'll have maybe another 2.5. So generally not bad. And I'm sure that within certain pockets in the economy, there will be lots of opportunity. Certainly on the tourism side, BPO seems to be doing well. So you'll have to search for opportunities. Banks generally tend to prefer higher interest rate environments. You know, some of the U.S. banks are, their results are coming up, and if you look on the Jamaican banks too, you may see that their net interest margins are improving a bit. Maybe they don't have as many loan opportunities out there, but I think that they will do okay. And let's just hope that in 12 months' time, we'll see a little light at the end of the tunnel.
Thanks for that context, Governor. So we did ask our rockers across our social media platforms, Instagram, Telegram. We have a very large Telegram group with almost 2,000 members, and across Twitter as well. What are some questions that they have for the governor and the senior deputy governor? And we did receive some. So I'm just going to start asking a few. Has there been evidence of wage-based inflation, and what metric does the BOJ use to measure pressure from the labor market besides unemployment? And are those sources more so qualitative than quantitative?
All right, thanks for that question. Well, what we actually do is that we actually survey the firms and we ask them where they think wages will go. And based on that, based on the responses, we are able to calibrate or estimate where we think or what is happening to wages. I mean, the official statistics on wages is a bit lagged. And that is why we have to rely more on our own surveys and the information and intelligence that we get as to what is happening on the industrial relation front.
Thanks. Oh, thanks for that. So just to go back to something that the governor said, thanks, Dr. Robinson, and to tie that in. So you mentioned that the response from the market or from the economic environment to policy rate changes is about 4 to 8 quarters, upwards to about 8 quarters. Your most recent policy rate move would have been an increase, and there would have been increases, as we mentioned before, coming from October of last year. We know that you have a policy rate meeting mid next month. The Fed has a meeting before yours, which I suspect you'll be watching very, very, very keenly. Do you expect further tightening? And just for our audience, do you expect policy rates to increase further, given that the impact response on the economy is 4 to 8 quarters? So if the expectation is that inflation is coming down in the latter quarter last year, maybe the response from this policy rate increases to a further 2024. So just asking, do you think policy rates will go up, or do you anticipate that?
Sitting here, I can't say. Not because I don't want to say, but because I really want the data to inform our decision. Right? So we have a couple of more weeks to go, and in those weeks, lots of stuff can happen. You mentioned one, what the Fed does, but there are a lot of other data that we want to look at and to measure and to assess, opinions that we're going to be receiving. So I can't say because I really don't know. And I think if you ask any MPC member, they're going to say that they won't be able to know until they get the presentation and see all of that data.
So what the Fed usually does is when they survey members of the committee prior, there's usually some. I'm leaning this way, or I'm leaning that way. So there's a 80% probability that it would be more on the upside, or there's a probability that it will be down. So I know you can't say 100% where your mind is, but can you give an indication of where you're leaning towards, or where Dr. Robinson's team of economists are leading towards?
Which way you leaning? We're left or right?
So you're in between. All right, no problem.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask is, you were mentioning earlier that the Bank of Jamaica is actually independent, and I think that's a very key point to be made, especially in an environment like this. BOJ received its independence, I believe, in 2020, just before or during that COVID period. Give us an idea what it means to have a central bank that's actually independent, and how does that actually impact the decision making for by the Bank of Jamaica?
Right. It's a very interesting question. So in April of last year, we became independent effectively. Well, first of all, it means that we were given the capital that we needed in order to participate in the market, and that's important. But secondly, it means that the Minister of Finance has no authority to tell us how to operate monetary policy. Right? And that's important too. And that's really underscores the independence because previously, the members of our board had finance secretary on it, head of the PIOJ, and there's a lot of influence. And depending on who the minister was, they would have more influence or less influence. This minister that we have, for as long as I've been at BOJ, has been very hands off, and I think that that is to his credit. But when we became independent, it kind of formalized that he couldn't instruct us. And when you think of it, raising the policy rate as we have is not exactly to the benefit of the government because it does make some of their debt more expensive. Um, and so independence from them is important to make the decisions around policy that we think is important to fight inflation without having to look over our shoulder and guess whether we are hurting the minister or hurting the government. So we do it with a profound sense of responsibility, of course. And we do have to appear before Parliament. In fact, this week, you may have seen on the news, we appeared before the Public Accounts Committee. And we go before Standing Finance Committee also. So a couple of times for the year, we have to answer to Parliament. But it's really important, although, you know, the minister does have the authority to appoint who is governor. Once he does that, he has no authority over how that governor and the MPC and the board of the Bank of Jamaica operates. And it's an important cornerstone of our financial infrastructure. Another one that is coming shortly is the fiscal commissioner. I believe that's what it's called. And that is an office that is going to be set up to look at the budget and to assess whether the budget is in line with achieving longer term strategic objectives. For example, 60% debt to GDP. And again, this is going to be a fundamental cornerstone of having the kind of financial infrastructure that Jamaicans can rely on to be independent, to be professionally managed, and to be outside of the realm of politics.
Thanks, Governor. That's an important point as it pertains to that the government has variable rate debt, and as such, when rates increase and when on the back of an increase in the policy rate, they may end up have to paying more on these types of debt. So it doesn't necessarily help them. So effectively, what you're saying is that this this board of governors for the Bank of Jamaica has probably the most control that any board of governors has ever had, because no other governor and a group of governors before would have had to, well, all of them before would have had some form of dotted line or line to the minister of finance.
Yes, that is so. Let me make a point about the debt. So when you look on government debt, about 60%, I believe, when is foreign debt. So our rates don't affect that. And then another maybe 20% is fixed. about 20% or so is a fixed rate. So again, we don't impact that. But it's the remaining 20 that is variable rate that we do. And the government is probably much more interested in having an exchange rate that is fairly stable because that helps with the debt to GDP much more than interest rates. So I don't think they are cross with us entirely.
Can I just make a point in terms of independence? Something we shouldn't forget when we talk about independence is not just the fact that we can make professional decisions without external influence. A key part of the independence is the accountability. So we are not, the governor is not down there at the waterfront just doing what he wants to do. But the law and the framework that we have requires that we are answerable. The governor mentioned that we're answerable to Parliament. But there are a number of other things as well. We have to be very transparent. So the law actually specifies a timeline. Once we make a decision, we have to communicate that to the public within a particular timeline. We also have to publish our minutes. That's something that is unique within the Caribbean. We have to publish our minutes within a particular timeline. When we miss an inflation target, we have to write a report to the minister who then publishes it. So built into the system is this whole idea of accountability.
So one of the things, I think I saw the report the other day that Jamaica is one of the few Caribbean countries through COVID and even now that would have maintained its credit rating, which really is a big deal when you think about it. I mean, other Caribbean countries and even other large economies who saw downgrades right through COVID, and Jamaica was able to maintain its credit rating, which is a very big deal. And a part of the report are saying that Jamaica's economic framework is one of the key things that allow us to remain stable and that the level of confidence by the rating agencies. But to the extent that we're independent, has there ever been an instance when there's conflicting views between the fiscal policies being taken and the monetary policies being taken, to the extent that fiscal is purely driven by the government at hand, and monetary, now being an independent bank, is driven by the decisions by the government, by the Bank of Jamaica? When there is a conflict in the policy decisions in terms of expansionary or contractionary, how exactly is that resolved? Or is there a conversation around things like that?
Yeah, another excellent question. So there can be instances of a conflict between fiscal and monetary. If we, and we have in the past, run a fiscal deficit that is substantial, and what that does is that tends to be inflationary, and that puts the burden on the central bank to mop it up, but it's very expensive to do so. Fortunately for us, certainly in my time at the Bank of Jamaica, and I would say certainly from maybe about 2014 when we started that IMF policy. Remember, we had about 2 or 3 IMF agreements. The fiscal and the monetary have worked in harmony. And that has been part of the maturing of our financial infrastructure and management that we have seen that. As it stands now, the Ministry of Finance is running a fiscal surplus, small but nonetheless a surplus. And what that does is help to take liquidity out of the system, which is what we want. So we are in full harmony in that respect.
Over the past 2 years, there has been a notable increase in rental inflation. Is that one of the variables that the Bank of Jamaica is tracking?
Well, yes, we look at that because when we look at the CPI, we look at what are the major categories that are moving one way or another. And that jumps out at us. I think this year recently, and there was an instance last year also. So we look at it and we try to understand why is that so and what's driving that, and is it something fundamental in the economy, what part of the housing sector is that representative of. So it's something that we do look at quite seriously.
So one of the things that we kind of want to do is just get an idea, like, what is it a day in the life of the governor and the deputy governor, senior deputy governor at the Bank of Jamaica. How do you spend? I mean, I'm sure you don't look at data all the time. Like, how do you spend your spare time? Like, give us an idea. Like, how do you spend this? The after making such a hard different decisions. Like, how do you spend your spare time? Like, what's it like in the day in the life of the governor and senior deputy governor?
Well, I come to work pretty early, and Wayne is already there. So I try to beat the traffic and come early, and in the afternoon to beat the traffic and go back up. But I leave him there. So I spend the day essentially in meetings, writing letters. There's a lot of stuff that the governor has to do formally. I spend a lot of time doing that. But meetings to do with, whether it is supervising the financial sector or it is to do with research and monetary policy or to do with banking. There always are a lot of meetings. And it's a big education for me coming from the private sector. So I really enjoy immersing myself in those meetings and hearing what is going on. Now, Wayne, who is a very serious economist, can tell you what his day is like, but I'm sure he's more data-driven than me.
I mean, what the governor didn't say is that we spend a lot of time debating in the bank. When you put two economists together, let alone more than 20 economists, now you know what happens in the bank. But it's quite interesting. It's very variable. I have to get in before the governor so that I can prep for when the governor gets into office. That's very. But generally, on a typical day for me, the first thing I will do is check the markets. What's happening?
That's the financial market.
That's the financial market.
Both local and international.
Both local and international. What are the emerging news? What happened last night? What is it we need to do? And so on. And then, of course, you have your meetings. Some of them are standing meetings. And then you also have to do your own prep work as well. But I guess the fun part is just, interacting with the staff. Of course, that has been a challenge over COVID. But now that things are slowly going back to normal, I mean, there are persons that haven't seen in physically, although we speak almost every other day, but you haven't seen them physically for over a year, and so, when you see them in the office, it's such a good experience. And that's what I like most about the job, just working with the people. As a governor said, we have a very good, dedicated team at the bank.
Okay, so there's a lingering debate among the rockers, and I really want to get your view about it, right? Simon is of a view and I'm of a different view. If you had to choose between oxtail and turkey neck, which one would you guys pick?
There's no question about that. Oxtail. No. Turkey neck. Oxtail.
Oxtail is overvalued. That's way over the benchmark.
Like Twitter. Pay too much for it.
Dr. Robinson.
Oxtail or turkey neck.
I don't like turkey neck, and my wife will tell you.
So it's just me.
Yeah, just you, Simon. So one of the things we kind of want to know is like, based on your experience, both yourself and Dr. Wayne Robinson, like, what would you say to yourself 30 years ago, a 30-year younger version of yourself, based on your experience in the market and what you would have seen, particularly in Jamaica and internationally? What's a piece of advice that I would give to yourself 30 years ago, if you could speak to that person today?
I never thought of that question. Well, I probably should have got married a little earlier, because one of the greatest things that happened to me was to marry the woman that I did. I got married at 31, and maybe I should have done it at about 28. But, from early, I've been an investor. I've loved the stock market, and I've been investor in it for many, many years. When I say many, I should say many decades. I've never really found myself in the US market until recently, and haven't done very well there. But in the Jamaican market over the last couple of decades, I've seen it all. I've seen it from nothing, fly up through the roof, come down back again, fly up through the roof again. And what people say, that it's very true, that you cannot make real money, build equity outside of the stock market. You have to be in it, and you have to be in it for the long run, and you have to take the swings back and forth. Um, so I would say to any young person, as I say to my sons, uh, apart from what it takes to live, and live reasonably, not extravagantly, you need to invest 80% of your money. So anytime you make a little money, 80% of it, invest it. And even if the market doesn't look too good now, look for a good buy, sit in it, and it will come through for you one day. There's no other way for you to do very well for yourself other than invested in equities.
Dr. Robinson goes, what was your first stock, Governor Biles?
Boy, I believe it was like, what is Jamaica Producers? What was it called? Jamaica Banana Producers Association. You remember that?
Okay. No, yeah, man, I remember seeing that somewhere.
That stock was built on, they had a big business in the UK, which they still do, but it was much bigger back then. And it earned foreign currency. And so even though the exchange rate was moving, the results were still very positive. And I remember saying to my wife one time, when we built the first house up in Stony Hill, which I built out of stock market, I said, boy, we really should name this house Jamaica Banana Producers.
That's excellent to hear, Dr. Robinson.
Well, 30 years ago, I was not only thinking about the books, but also thinking about getting married and how quickly I could get married. But anyway, well, what I would say is patience.
Mm.
Patience. When you're young and exuberant, there's a lot of impatience. You want things to happen now. So looking back, one word I would say: be patient, plan carefully, think over the long term, and also ensure you have contingency.
Okay.
Contingency plan is important, because things will not go how you want them to go.
Okay.
Always have a plan B.
Yeah, Dr. Robinson, if you could put down that mic and go somewhere right now, anywhere in the world, tell the boss that you're taking 3 weeks off and go anywhere in the world, where would that be?
Alaska.
Really? That's interesting. Why?
I've just been fascinated. I love nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated by nature.
So you love Portland?
Well, I go to Portland quite often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I go to my wife is from Portland, so I go to Portland quite often.
Yeah, man.
But I'm a nature lover, and
Mm.
Alaska has a lot of variety and a lot of diversity.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, so one thing on my bucket list is to go on an Alaskan cruise.
I'm going to talk to your boss and ask for a few days.
Please do.
After the policy meeting.
And also some financial help to go on a cruise.
No problem. Governor, where would you go?
Oh, recently I've had on my mind, and I've said to my wife, I want to go to Turkey. I want to experience.
The economy?
Maybe, but the dollar is so strong over there.
Yeah.
Should get a
Yes.
good deal. But those countries, Morocco, Tunisia, Turkey, I just want to experience that kind of Afro-Arabic countries to see what it's like. Egypt, all of those countries. I think I like that.
Well, I hear that you have a very strong team of deputy governors and a senior deputy governor that can take over for a few days. So, maybe you should think about that.
So we've heard that that you're a gym person, that you're consistent in the gym. How much you can bench press right now? Like where are you right now in the gym bench pressing?
You try shame me. In fact, since COVID started, I gave up my gym membership, but I bought some equipment and I have it at home. So every morning I get up and I do a little treadmill and I do a little weight workout. You just have to keep the old age off a bit. That's all I try to do.
So once you wake up in the morning, so Dr. Wayne reaches early, you also reach early, so you still find time to work out before you go in office and before you start today?
Yes, I have a funny cycle. I go to bed by 9:30 in the night and I'm up by 3:34 in the morning. Have my coffee and then I go and do my little workout and have my breakfast 6:30 and I'm ready to leave.
Wow. What about you, Dr. Robinson?
I'm not a gym person. just
So what do you do? What do you do in your spare time?
Well, I love to walk, so that's my source of exercise. But in my spare time, well, yeah, I love to fish.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I used to come over here and fish.
Oh, okay.
Back in the days when there was a lot of mangroves along here. Yeah. So and over on the rough side as well. I love gardening as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And outside of that, a nice economic paper.
True to the profession.
You see why I'm off the work?
So, I mean, one of the things I kind of want to know as well, I mean, as an interesting question, Simon had asked me and I didn't have the answer for him, is are you guys allowed to invest in the stock market as the governor and senior deputy governor? Are you guys actually allowed to invest now?
Yes, we can invest, but we can't buy any stocks of enterprises that we regulate. So no financial institutions. So when I came to the Bank of Jamaica, I had to divest everything that I had in any financial institution.
Wow, that's very interesting. So, as part of that question for me is really to kind of find out, you would have been in the investing market as a CEO and as a chair and governor, chair, during both a high inflationary period and low inflationary period. For someone that's investing now or looking to start investing now, what are some of the things that you'd recommend to them in terms of what they should look for in terms of determining which stock to buy?
Well, look for stocks that have fundamental value. You have stocks with value and image, and then you have stocks with image and not so much fundamental value. So look for those that are good, solid, and are rooted in the economy and where the economy is going. And just be patient with them. They will come good. That's my advice.
Thanks for that. So that section was very refreshing. I hope we feel a bit looser. We want to drift the discussion into the Microfinance Act. So there are quite a few listed companies that are within that sector. We have the ISP, we have Dollar Financial, Access. So our audience, the rockers, and of course the guys on social media generally want to have a better understanding of what was the purpose of the Microfinance Act, and when you are reviewing a submission for approval from a microfinance agency under the Microfinance Act, what are the things that you look out for?
Well, should I really prepare for that one? But the Microfinance Act is there to protect consumers so that if you are a customer of a microfinance enterprise, you have rights, you have a law that you can refer to. Also, because we are very concerned about AML, CFT, that is money laundering and counter terrorist financing. Microfinance Act is designed to make sure that the enterprises in this area of business are up and their source of financing is known and is bona fide. So we have been going through and licensing them one at a time. And what we're really looking for is that the source of financing of the company is bona fide, that the management and the owners are, of good quality and uh, have a good reputation, don't have any criminal connection. And so we intend to have about half or a little more of, or than half of the industry licensed by the end of the year, um, including some of the most popular names that you know. Forgive me, I'm getting over the flu here. So Wayne, if you want to add anything.
No, you covered it, Governor. We received about 112 applications and we're processing it. And as the governor indicated, we hope that by the end of the year, we would have completed and have a decision on a number of entities that would account for it, certainly in terms of asset size, account for a sizable portion of the industry.
This is by the end of the calendar year, or
This
the.
year.
Well, that's just
This
eight more
This year.
weeks plus, and thus far there's only been
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Well, the team is working assiduously. At the end of the day, a lot depends on the information that comes in
Mhm.
and how quickly they can actually satisfy all the information requirement. A lot depends on that. But we have a dedicated team that is trying to work on that.
Okay. So you mentioned an important point, which I didn't know before. I hope the audience picked up on that. So you mentioned seeking to approve. I mean, subject to whatever it is in the submission, and that they fulfill all the criteria. A portion, probably up to 50% by the end of the year, and possibly do that by size. So based on those that are listed, I mean, we don't know about the private ones and how large they are. We know that Access would have gone through, but we also know that there is Dollar Financial and ISP as well. I suspect that those are in the batches to be done over the ensuing weeks, to be approved over the ensuing weeks.
Well, we can't speak, as you'll appreciate, to
Understood.
individual applications or to
thanks, I've
individual
asked.
entities.
All right.
Well, let me say it's a very important sector of the economy. You know, we treat it seriously, and so by the end of the year, we expect to have by asset size, right? So that means that the big ones will be approved by then, and we've got more than one, but one may have been only one may have been made public, but we've got more than one, and every week we do some.
Usually, for regulated entities by the central bank, their financial information is usually public. Is that something that we can see happening with the Microfinancing Act?
Well, there will be required a certain level of transparency, particularly also for your consumers, to ensure that the consumers are fully informed. As to the detail and the structure and the form, I mean, that is to be determined, and that will come.
Okay, so along the lines of some of the innovations being done by the central bank, the Microfinance Act is really game changing. I wanted to kind of ask a question about Jamdex. Well, not really only Jamdex, but particularly CBDC, which is the central bank digital currency, which Jamaica is one of the few countries. We're actually the first, right? Yeah, we're actually the first in the world that has a central bank digital currency. For those that don't really fully understand what that is, if you can give us a bit of a context about what exactly is a CBDC, what they call central bank development, so central bank digital currency.
Okay, so we're not the first in the world. I believe China has one that is operated on big time, but the Bahamas and the Eastern Caribbean also have a similar effort as we. I don't know how far they are along the road. So CBDC, or Jamdex as we have named it, really is very similar to credit that you have on your phone credit. So in the same way that you can send credit and receive credit, you will be able to do that with money. So CBDC, or Jamdex, is really cash that has been put on your phone and is digital, and it's the same as cash, meaning it's worth the same. $1 digital is the same as $1 in your hand as cash, but the idea is that people will be able to keep their money on their phone, keep it digitally, and use it digitally. So if I want to send somebody in Savlamar some money, I can sit right here and send it to them. I don't have to physically get it to them. But also what it does is it gives the government much more of a better ability to reach to persons that they want to in terms of offering path benefits or care packages or any pensioners to pay them. Right now, what happens in many instances is that a pensioner is sent a check to a post office in Katadupa, and they have to go there. They get it. Maybe they go there 3 times and it don't reach yet. Finally, they get it. They go to the store or the bar and they change it, and the store owner or the barman charge them money for changing it. With CBDC, all of that will be changed, and Miss Augusta or whatever her name is will get her money right on her phone immediately, and she'll be able to spend it from her phone. But what is fundamental with this is you have to have merchants who are prepared to accept CBDC, and this is really where we are now. We have done all of the technical work to bring CBDC to the point where we have issued it to at least one bank, NCB. NCB now has to recruit their merchant customers and their retail customers to take on CBDC. Fundamental is to get the merchants to accept it. Either a small merchant will do it by phone or the big merchant through their POS system. Also, we have to get the ATMs to be able to deal with CBDC. So the ball really is in the court of the banks, and specifically right now, NCB, to get the ATMs changed and to get the merchants' point of sale machines changed over. So you can go to Kentucky or to Island Grill and you can pay for your goods with the phone. It is a bit of a challenge, but we expect that by the end of next year, much more many more of the banks will be where NCB is, and a whole heap of merchants will be in a position to accept CBDC.
So a technical question with that, in the sense that, so what, as you said, the CBDC or Jamdex represents is a dollar for dollar. One Jamdex is equal to essentially one actual currency. Yeah. From a money supply perspective, though, does that not create something of an inflationary environment by creating new Jamdexes, or is it already accounted for in the monetary supply by the central bank?
Yes. So instead of us going to, let's say, De La Rue, who are the people who currently print some of our currency, and paying them millions of US dollars to print our currency, have them ship it here, we clear it, bring it, store it in a bank, and then distribute it to the other commercial banks. Instead of doing that, we will simply go to our computer and create CBDC and issue it instantaneously to banks who want it. So it's not affecting money supply. What it will do is replace whatever cash is within circulation. So we don't expect cash to be entirely replaced, but more and more, because it costs to manage cash. Every business has to pay the security company, has to pay the teller, has to pay the person handling the currency. So we expect that they will embrace CBDC, and it will be costless or much less costly for them to handle rather than cash itself. And the important thing about CBDC to the man in the street is that, unlike with a debit card where the merchant has to pay, or with a credit card where the merchant has to pay a big fee, it will be free. So when I send you $100, you'll get the full 100, and you won't pay anything to get it, and I won't pay anything to receive it. It's different in that way.
The final question from me before we just take a few minutes and just take questions from the crowd is as it pertains to the central bank's activities around financial literacy. So when particularly on Twitter a few years ago, And I mean, even across YouTube, etc. I believe it was when you just launched Twitter, there was a very big campaign, low and stable. I think even if yeah, Bloomberg carried something as well. Even if somebody didn't know exactly what we were saying was low and stable and what inflation was, I can say that based on the base of investors and prospective investors that we talked to, it got to them, right? And there was a constant dialogue on Twitter in particular around educating the public about what exactly the BOJ does. Um, how does the BOJ see itself continuing its, and I'll coin that as financial literacy or economic literacy initiatives going forward?
Well, I'm going to ask Wayne to speak on it because he's really overall in charge of it. But that particular campaign was massively successful. I can't express to you. I mean, if you go to the IMF, they're all wowed over by this campaign. And it was really very, very riveting. Um, what we are living now is the real thing because now it's not just a catchy jingle. Now we actually have to try to manage inflation and demonstrate what a central bank's mandate is all about. So that was in preparation. What we're experiencing now is the examination. Wayne?
And a key word is the credibility of the bank itself, to add credibility to the bank's inflation mandate.
Yeah. No, we have continued the activities, but we have decided that it's important that we be a little bit more targeted and a little bit more strategic. So we have moved away from the big headlines to try to zero in on some of the key fundamental concepts and issues. So using all the various media platform, traditional social media, for example, we we will be putting out tips and information, for example, on things like savings and budgeting. You would have seen in the newspaper over the past couple of months some FAQs, because what we realized, we were getting a lot of questions about bank services and what customers can expect. And so we have been trying to provide some of those answers. We have been running an ad on television on opening a bank account and simplified customer due diligence. Issues that are in the forefront of people's mind and things that of major concern to the public. We've been trying to address them in a lot more targeted way. We continue with a broad education on inflation and on the role of banks, the role of Bank of Jamaica. And one of the things we're focusing on now, and we're going to be ramping that up, is on Jamdex. So stay tuned.
That's actually what I was about to ask. You made mention to being opening bank accounts with Jamdex. Does a person is it required still to have a bank account? How do you actually address the concern of in Jamaica a lot of it is unbanked? How does the Jamdex help to address that particularly?
That's a good question. That is one of the main motivation for a digital currency. It's a part of our key, or one of our flagship strategies to drive financial inclusion and to bring the unbanked on board. Because you don't need a formal bank account, you don't need to go through with all the information and all the references and so on and so forth. Okay, all you do, it is a very simple process. It's based on simplified know your customer process, and what you do is that you actually get a wallet from the wallet provider. So it's a much simpler process. You don't have to apply for a bank account.
So now we'll take 3 questions. We are cognizant that we are over time. We have 1 question from our Telegram group. For anybody that's not already a part of that, please join. You can search for that on Telegram. The question is about the cannabis industry and their banking. So I'm the person just stated that and put a question mark. So I suspect they're asking if if there is some outlook for cannabis companies or companies that deal in cannabis legally to bank in the future.
Right. So the banks out here have what is called correspondent banking relationships, which mean anytime you want to do a transaction that is outside of our borders, you have to go through your correspondent bank. So if I even want to send you US dollars, it has to go from my bank abroad to my bank's correspondent bank to your bank's correspondent bank and then down to you. So those relationships with correspondent banks are vitally important. Unfortunately for the cannabis industry, uh, cannabis is not legal federally in the United States. And so any financial institution that deals with cannabis is open to having their license revoked. And for that reason, correspondent banks don't want banks down here to deal with cannabis business. And so that's the dilemma we find ourselves in. Uh, the world is changing. In fact, just this morning I heard on BBC that Germany is about to legalize cannabis. I don't know what that means. We have it, it's legalized in Jamaica to some extent too. And I think the world is traveling in that direction. So there will be a day when that issue of cannabis being illegal in the United States gets removed and people can bank freely. But until then, it's a problem.
Do you have a personal opinion as to whether you think it should get to a point where they can legally bank in Jamaica? Cannabis companies.
I mean, I personally have nothing against the cannabis laws that we have here in Jamaica. And to the extent that the United States would adopt laws like that would be good. But from a banking point of view, until that stigma is removed from it, we're going to find that no commercial bank in Jamaica will touch that business.
Thank you. Now we'll take a question from the crowd. If you have a question, we have a mic right here. You can just. So we have a mic. So you can just come up to the front and ask. I can move with that. Or somebody else. Wait.
Hi, evening, Dr. Rob. I know you're the researcher. What are you seeing for the bauxite industry, and specifically, say Noranda, Windalco? I know they've been going through some rough times, but what are your research telling you about that industry and investing in it? For example, buying trucks, getting investment going, and getting returns from those trucks.
All right. I mean, the fortunes of the bauxite industry really rest a lot on what is happening in the global economy, where alumina prices are concerned, and where the demand and supply, how the demand and supply imbalances are across the globe. And also where across the globe you have the most efficient productive capacity. We have not, over the years, been able to develop the type of competitive industry, except for one or two plants. So we have had this challenge over many years. So what we're seeing in Jamaica now is an industry that is going through some structural changes. It goes through some cycles and it goes through some consolidation. There's still some amount of uncertainty now because a lot depends on where the prices go. And right now, of course, recession fears are also weighing down on the markets and on expectations. But the lesson that we have learned from this is that we have to seek to diversify the economy. We can't have an economy that's based on just 2 engines or 3 engines. We have to try and have a more diversified economy. But I mean, we do expect, as the governor indicated, Jamalco has restarted. So we do expect to see a strong rebound in the sector. But over the long term, there are some structural issues that we have to contend with.
The short answer is, well, I'm asking you, is it a good or a bad investment for the short to medium term?
Well, I like to stay away from speaking specifically to investment prospects in specific sectors. Right? What I'd say to you, as the governor said, look at the fundamentals, look at the trajectory. A lot depends on where the global economy is going, how people perceive the global economy, for one, and what is happening globally in the sector.
Thanks for that. There was another question. Think Malik? Yes.
Oh, all right, thanks. Good night.
All right,
There's only
Malik.
one, so don't worry. No, it's one. Good night. During this turbulent time on the world stage, we've seen higher than usual inflation. But is there a way to know if price gouging also feeds into that? And how could you possibly put a stop to it?
Oh, well, yes, price gouging is what we're talking about when we say that people have expectations about inflation that are unwarranted. So they feel that they can get more, and so they charge more. And our job is to take as much liquidity out of the system and tamper down purchasing power to the point where they know that they have to be careful about how they set a price, how they raise a price, because people will be very sensitive to that price. So that, in a way, your question about gouging is connected to this issue of how people perceive what purchasing power can do in the future and the impact that we can have on that purchasing power.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from
One
Twitter?
more.
Oh, we have one more here.
Hi, good night. I know it's close to your guys' bedtime, so I'll be quick. So my question is in relation to, you mentioned AML and CFT policy earlier in your presentation. So my question is related to the recent developments regarding the Foreign Action Task Force. We're currently fully compliant with, I think, 27 of the 40 recommendations. So what role, if any, is the Bank of Jamaica playing in ensuring full compliance with the other 13? What approach is the Bank of Jamaica taking? What advice is being given to the finance minister to ensure full compliance with these other recommendations?
Yeah, the bank has played the coordinating role for the last 2 years and continues to do so. It's been a long process, and it involves a multitude of private sector, civil and government sector institutions. Really complicated, the kind of job that nobody really wants, but it has to be done. And we have made good progress over the years, but not enough. And we were set back because of COVID. So we should have achieved more, and we should have achieved more much earlier than we have. But COVID naturally kind of slowed things down. We do have a couple tough hurdles to overcome, which we are working on. We have a big test coming up in February, where we are determined to pass. We have had absolute cooperation and support from the Ministry of Finance and other ministries, such that they play a role. So we do have their support. But some of the tough challenges we have nothing to do with government, but has to do with the private sector and civil organizations, because the law is trying to make sure that there are no kind of holes through which counter-terrorism through terrorist financing or money laundering can seep. So issues like relationship between a lawyer and their client, issues of civil organizations that have to do with charities and where their funding is coming from. You'd be surprised to know that those are of some importance in trying to bring within the embrace of this system. So that's the kind of remaining challenges that we have in front of us. Wayne, anything to add?
Just to note that the major areas that we have to focus on really relates to legislation and regulations. Legislation in relation to the Companies Act, regulations as it relates to charities. So a lot of work is being done on that, and the bank and the government and the minister, we are determined that we have to meet these commitments. And it's not just meeting it for FATF's sake, but we want to ensure that our financial system in Jamaica, how we do business in Jamaica, it is sound, it is robust to some of these risks, which are real risks. Terrorism financing is a real risk. Money laundering is a real risk. So we want to ensure that our systems are actually robust to these risks. So it's important not just for FATF, but for every Jamaican.
And thanks everyone for your questions, and thanks to everyone that is on Telegram who asked their questions in our group. My final question actually relates to productivity. So a key challenge that we've had over the last few years, certainly I believe it's been more than a decade, is that our rate of labor productivity has been falling or flat. What are some of the initiatives? I mean, if it's on as an economist and as a researcher, how have you diagnosed the problem? I know you must look at productivity at some point, and what are some of the ways that we can improve productivity in Jamaica?
Yeah, again, that's a really, really important question. In my view, and Wayne and I have discussed this a lot, and we are united in this opinion. For Jamaica, what we need is a much more educated workforce. Because when you are more educated, you have greater value to add in your job. It's no use we keep producing people who do the same job that we were doing 10 years ago, 20 years ago. You'll get the same level of value coming out. What we need are persons who are in tune with the economy of the future, who can be much more productive and more on the cutting edge of where the market and where the world is going. And through that means, Jamaicans will become more productive. So it really means that we have to take a look at our education system and be determined about investing in it. And that's a long-term project. It takes 10 years, 15 years to build the teacher quality and keep them, build the infrastructure that is appropriate, and graduate cohorts of Jamaicans. But if we start, we have a hope. If we don't start, then we will forever be on this treadmill of producing new persons a little more productive, but not sufficiently productive to really drive GDP growth in the country. So I'm a big supporter of the concept of making education a national project that all political parties agree on, and that we have a plan that, just like how we signed an agreement with the IMF in 2014 and we changed political parties and we still carried out the program and implemented it, and now Jamaica is the poster boy of the IMF as a country that has stepped back from the brink of financial calamity to where we are now. We can do that too with education. And so between 2014 and now, 8 years we have invested in building this financial stability and infrastructure. And that is what has got us here, that investment. If we did that in education, in 8 years, we will start to see the product from that.
Okay, thank you for that. I have one final question, but I was asking if the license plate number 3951HR, things are RAV4, I think you're blocking someone that needs to leave urgently. A white RAV4, if your license plate is 3951HR, you're blocking someone. So can you just attend to that for us? So my final question really is, how can the average Jamaican, Hartner Richards, Simon Johnson, all the rockers here today, everybody online, how can the average Jamaican contribute to improving or aiding the central bank in combating inflation and essentially contributing to economic growth? How can the average Jamaican aid in that fight with the central bank to achieve low and stable inflation?
Well, from an individual point of view, keep doing your job, be productive in doing so. I don't know what else to say. The whole economy needs to react to our policy moves to keep inflation low. We have about a year of little rough times ahead of us in respect of inflation, but thereafter things will pick up again and we'll get back on that smooth road where we can lower interest rates, bring it down, and get growth going more strongly again. Wayne?
The key is to be more productive. And I guess as a typical household, you have to shop around as well, you know. That may be a little bit challenging, depends on what you want, but you have to shop around as well. And finally, listen to what the bank is saying. We try to give you as much information as possible and try to paint as clear a picture as we can about what is to come. So pay attention to that. Pay attention to what the governor says.
Thanks. And just a note, the Consumer Affairs Commission actually has a website that allows you to compare grocery prices across different supermarkets. I found it very interesting. We did a thread on Stocks on the Rocks, and I was surprised. I will mention the supermarkets here, of which supermarkets are expensive versus which ones we think are expensive. So that was really eye-opening to me. GAA, and this is a free plug, has a website that also allows you to compare gas prices, so you can know exactly where to purchase gas. And I have to say this: some of the most expensive gas is right here, but I'll just leave that. Some of the right on this stretch. But anyways, thanks a lot, Governor Biles. Thanks a lot, Senior Deputy Governor Robinson. Are there any final words that you both have for us?
Well, just to thank you for having us. I mean, Bank of Jamaica loves to have opportunities like these to interact. And this is a great one. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I think we have a lot of BOJ people who are listening in tonight. We have there's a lot of excitement and interest in what you're doing here. It's very innovative. I mean, it's 9:10, and I don't know why all these young people are not doing what all young people should do on a Friday night. You know, I guess after about 10 o'clock you'll get going, and that's when I get into bed.
Yeah, ditto. Thank you very much. This was quite a unique and innovative, setting and innovative experience. I enjoyed it a lot. Some of my colleagues, some of them are rockers, told me before, oh, this is a rough group, you have to be prepared. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed the setting. So thanks very much.
Yeah, man, we appreciate that. And thanks to everybody that has tuned in on YouTube, on Instagram, Twitter, Twitter Spaces. Thanks again to Deputy for continuing to support us in what we do. This isn't free to put on, and they've ensured, and Nicola, Adrian, big up, have ensured that we have everything that we need. Really appreciate it. Thanks to my co-moderator Harton and the Stocks on the Rocks team that have supported us, Trevor and Rochelle, Millwood, etc. And everything that they, and Renee, Mark, big up Visual Tech. Mark has really, donated his time. He owns a very large company, like he tries to understate it. And he's donated his time to set up all of this equipment for us. Thanks to Jason for assisting with the videography and donating his equipment and time as well. Really, guys, it's not just me, it's not just Harden. We couldn't put this on without the team behind us. So we love you, we appreciate you. Continue to interact with our social medias. With our socials. Thanks to the audience that is here. I can't see everybody because of the lights now. Guys, this is everything change every month, right? Every month you come here, you see a new innovation. So I wonder what you'll see next month. And again, thank you so much, Governor Biles, and thanks a lot, the Deputy Governor Robinson. Really appreciate it. And guys, we have drinks and we have food, We have drinks and food. Don't be shy, The jelly man is right there, so buy out the jelly, etc. And we have free drinks and free food. So take advantage.